I am your host of Across Generations, Tiffany D. Cross, and this is the only place where you will hear three different perspectives from three distinct generations of Black women, and I'm so thrilled to invite you to this conversation. So I heard in a movie once that childhood should be the happiest times in our life. But for me, childhood is what I spent the rest of my life trying to overcome. Well, I can certainly relate to that line. We hear a lot about people having daddy issues, but we rarely talk about women who have mommy issues. And I can testify many of us have them, including me. Now, my mother and I have a very challenging relationship. That's not to say we're not close. We actually talk like every day and most times multiple times a day. But our conversations are often plagued by disagreements or unforgotten trauma, unresolved issues, and hurt feelings. You see, my mother was an alcoholic. She's sober today, praise the Lord, but she was an alcoholic, and that cast a wide shadow over my childhood. She was never married to my father, and I have no recollection of these two being together, but they were both very present in my life individually. My father was also an alcoholic, and he passed away when I was barely 12 years old. And I have to say, my mother did her best to juggle the struggles. There was a lot of instability emotionally, financially, and otherwise. And because of so many things happening at home, I made the choice to leave home at just 16 years old. I was only a child and had to become an adult and take ownership over my life and agency over my will. Now, it taught me grit, survival skills, and instinct, but it also set me on a course of questions. The most consistent being, am I lovable? And as I've been on this life journey, getting answers to these very questions, I was led back home to myself. And I came to view my mother as a woman and understood that she too was struggling to overcome her own trauma from her mother, who was struggling to overcome her own trauma from her life, and on and on and on these bruises go. The bruises we bear as Black women could chain a soul. A lot of healing needs to take place. And if we start with the most important relationship, the woman who gave us life and is biologically wired to love us, to quote the poets, the materials are here for the deepest mutuality and the most painful estrangement. So if you have a challenging relationship with your mother or your daughter, this is a show for you. Let's get started. I am joined today by two wonderful women who also have challenges. We have with us our seasoned guest, Miss Glennis Crosby. Thank you so much for being here. And we also have Carla, and I don't want to mess up your last name, Carla. I'm just
Wilmaris.
Wilmaris. I always mess up Carla's last name. Carla also is the executive producer of this show. Now, Miss Crosby is a 62-year-old mother of 6 and a current entrepreneur and a career hairdresser. And though having a strained relationship with her mother, she still seeks approval and validation and hopes to forgive her mother. So Carla is also an entrepreneurial millennial mother of 2. She left a full-time career as an accountant to become a full-time podcast host and coach and strategist. And she's decided to focus on herself and her mental well-being instead of trying to mend her relationship with her mom. Now, believing it's not necessary for her personal journey, this is the course she's taken, and we're going to get into all of that right now. Thank you, ladies, for having what I think is a very deep and relatable conversation, given that we all have mothers, whether they're with us or not, and that relationship defines so much about our other relationships. So I want to start with you, Ms. Glennis. What is the most challenging thing about your relationship with your mom?
Coming from, my mother was abusive. I don't think she knew she was abusive because she was in a space where she was surviving. But the most challenging thing every day is she doesn't acknowledge it at all. Mm-hmm. And my mother's now 87. So at 62, and I have to care for her in a loving manner. It's still hard when I have to care for her now. The roles have been reversed, but she doesn't acknowledge her abuse towards me and what it created. She denies it, actually, or she's forgotten it, or she chooses not to address it, as I am now her caregiver. Now, my mother's not sick, but I'm saying, you know, how you have to take mom to the airport or do things with her. But every day I have to gulp down something in order to love her. and I want to love her.
I completely, I understand that. If you don't mind, what can you share with us a little bit about abuse?
Okay, so I'm 62. So my mother is a mother. She's the oldest of 16. So she was the mother. She was the daughter taking care of all of her siblings. Her mother was abusive towards her because she was the oldest. So my dad left us when we were 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the projects, poor. So my mom had to figure out how to raise 4 children, uneducated. And I think she was 22 back in the 60s. And so now it's like she just disciplined us the way she was taught to discipline. If you talk, if you drop some water, if you look at her strange, you got hit. And it was very, and it happened from the beginning up until I was 16 years old. My mom she had a belt and she cut her belt. It was a belt. She cut the belts into strips. So that not only would you get 1 lick, you would get 5. It was nonstop. She would put you underneath her leg like you 3 years old, and she would put your head here, your butt is here. She got this belt, and she's angry, and she's wailing, and it doesn't stop. And the helplessness is overwhelming. And I'm getting emotional talking about it to go back to it. And then she would put you in cold water so the whelps wouldn't come up, so nobody could see it. And then she would fix you dinner and say she loved you. And it was the reason she beat you is because she needed to control your motion. And whatever you did, she had to control it. And then she would fix you a great dinner and we would go to bed. And it happened day after day for the least of infractions. If you drank a Pepsi, we couldn't drink Pepsis. If you drank her Pepsi, because she had her Pepsis, somebody sneak and drink, all 4 of us would get a beating until she broke the person who drank the Pepsi. You know, just little things. You walked around her like, don't make a mistake.
Walking on eggshells.
Don't talk too loud. And it crushes you in a space that it takes a lifetime to dig from under.
Of course.
Yeah. And she did it in the name of love. This is what love looks like. So as a kid, you don't know that you're being abused. You take that on yourself and say, if I could only be better, if I could only get it right. And you live with that, still live with it, you know, and things that show up in your life today. So yeah, the abuse was consistent. It was constant, non-relenting. And I was the youngest, so I didn't get the brunt of it. My older siblings, especially my brothers, got the brunt of the beatings. I mean, to the point when we were like 13, 14, she would line us up naked in front of each other, and we waited our turn to figure out who did the infraction. She would beat us while we stood naked in the hallway waiting. So now we're looking at each other's bodies, waiting for the abuse.
Yeah.
It was mentally handicapping at the time.
I have to tell you, so many of us understand that. I never experienced it to that level, but this is something that is rooted in enslavement and it was learned behavior. Yeah. And this is how this generational trauma passes down. And I want to be clear, white folks beat their kids too. This is not, often people think this is a black thing. It is not. We learned this violence from white violent oppressors, but it is this behavior of course your mother loved you, and in our household, so often love was something that was understood and not expressed, and beat you out of her own fear and her own trauma. I think that's so, and I want to come back to that because the view of it was through discipline and how that has changed. Before we dive deeper in that, though, I do want to hear from you, Carla. Listening to this, I'm emotional and have my own.
Before we even started, before the camera started rolling,
as soon as we sat down, we were like into this. Tell me your most challenging thing with your mom right now.
It's crazy because as I'm listening to her, I realize how different my abuse was, it was so much mental. My very first recollection was being 12 years old. And in Puerto Rico, we celebrate Three Kings. I already lived here in the United States. Like, it was very British. So we would go every holiday. And I remember we were at this park. This little girl walked up to my dad, and she's probably 3 years younger than I was, walked up to him, gave him a hug. I remember my mom tensing up. My dad tensed up. My mom said, "Who is that?" And my dad said, "Oh, it's just like, it's a friend's daughter, blah, 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 something, and neighbors." And literally within minutes, she pulled out money, handed it to me, and she said, "Go buy candy and find out everything that little girl knows and who she is." And from that moment, I became the person that always had to find out who he was cheating with. What is he doing? Go fix it. And I was always in the middle of it. And whatever issues she had with him, it would take it out on me. Whether it was the silent treatment, whether it's calling me fat all the time. And keep in mind, it's a teenager. I was like 110 pounds. So I would walk around and I'll hear moo, and she'll moo towards me. Or I don't remember her saying, "I love you." I remember the comparison between myself and my siblings all the time. And it was always just this mental game with me. But I always wanted to please her. So I'm like, because if I did something like finding out who the little girl was, coming in my 20s to go fight women, all of that pleased her. So that's what I always wanted to do. That she liked me then. We were good then. So I constantly wanted to please this woman, that if I wasn't doing something for her, then afterwards it was just kind of like, meh.
Yeah.
You're not really there. It's like, let me get back to the kid that I love and that I'm with, but you're crazy. You have all this anxiety. And I'm like, now older, I'm like, well, I wasn't crazy. I had so much on my mind that I didn't need to worry about. I didn't need to be hearing all the things that I was hearing while I was home between you guys, conversations, and just all this hatred that was then spewed towards me because I was interjected into whatever they had going on and brought on by her. So everything was really mental. Yes, there were whoopings. But what I remember from her, it's all just like this. When I talk about her and when I think of it, I just get anxious.
And it taught you that you have to work to earn love when love should be free, but you had to work to earn your mother's love. I'll tell you, that's really interesting to contrast that, it was a physical abuse and mental abuse. Both, it's mental abuse for you as well. I have to say with my mom, I did get hit. And I think that was a normal part of discipline when we were younger. Now, we were talking about this earlier, that it feels like abuse. But at that time, it was normal to be hit. I was not a child who ever needed to be hit. Like, you could hurt my feelings and that was enough. So when I was in trouble, I would run up to my mom. I'd be crying. Most kids would run and hide. I would run to my mom and hold her and say, "Mommy, I love you so much. How could you do this to me?" And she would be trying to hit me and end up hitting herself. So it wasn't a lot. Our challenges came mostly from her drinking. And like you, my mother will not acknowledge it. It's like that happened and we have moved on. Or if I bring up one little thing, it's like, I don't want to talk about this, like just, it would go so far. I remember when she got sober, it wasn't that long ago. It was about 6 years ago now. And I was thinking like, oh, okay, I know the 12-step program. She's going to want to have this whole conversation and apologize. I needn't to have worried because there was no apology coming. There was not even an acknowledgement coming that this thing happened throughout my childhood. The night I left home, my mother was drunk out of her mind and she was so angry. She lost her mother and saw her mother die. We were in this house that just felt like death to me. It was just awful. And after she lost her mother, she could not come back to reality. And she was yelling. We had an exchange. She hit me and I hit her back. And I left home at 16 and never went back again. And on that journey has been this journey of trying to mend that relationship, trying to understand her. So I'm curious because at least you want to reconnect with your mom.
No, well, my mother continued to love me and abuse me my whole life, even into when I was married. At one point, I found myself paying her mortgage. She tricked me about some money and then attached it to her mortgage. So, if I loan you $5,000, that's different than attaching that to your mortgage. Because if you paying your mortgage, the principal, interest, whatever, you might pay $10 toward that, but the rest is principal and interest. And she kept this thing. So for years, I paid her mortgage on this small loan. But I'm going to tell you, honestly what broke the yoke for me. I then had a daughter who I thought was it. And I have never hit her because of the abuse that I suffered. I knew what it felt like to be a helpless child. And your mother, the lady supposed to love you the most, is bringing that vengeance on your body. So when I had my little girl, I poured into her everything I had. I mean, she played, just loved her. We cheered together. We cooked together. I thought I was being this perfect mom. As a matter of fact, my daughter was very talented. So she was on stages. She was in concerts. I was dressing her. I was a hairdresser. Her hair was the best going to school. I wanted her to look a certain way. I doted on her. And when she became like 12, 13, 14, one day I looked at her. The way she looked at me is the way I looked at my mother. And I couldn't figure out, like, why is she looking at me like I'm perfect? I did everything great. And she looked at me, y'all, I'm telling you, it froze my heart. I'm like, I'm in the same area. And so I thought praying about it. I started thinking about it because I was like, I didn't beat her. Why is she looking at me that way? And I promise y'all, here's my hand to God. God spoke to me and told me, until you forgive your mother, you're going to keep on with this generational curse. It's a curse of generations of women and our daughters and the relationships. And here I'm thinking I'm perfect. But I probably, even though I didn't hit her, I probably was making demands of her body that I wasn't even aware of how she had to walk, how you had to look, how you had to be in public, cross your legs, speak to this one, go over there and hug your uncle. I was still abusing my daughter from those generational demands that we put on young Black girls.
Yeah.
I should not have demanded she like her aunts who didn't like her, or go places she didn't want to go. And then I was a momager too. So in the entertainment space, I did have to require some things. So I made up in my mind that I was going to figure out how to forgive my mother and love her, because I needed my daughter and my relationship to turn. And sure enough, I forgave my mother in my heart, and what I had to do, I had to over love her in a space. I had to over kiss her. I had to hug her. And at first it was so uncomfortable. And then I had to continue to do it. And then I saw my daughters and our relationship change from what it was to a friendship as she became a woman. And I know that I can't demand anything. My mother's not going to change. She doesn't, because she'll say, I did what I had to do. That's her thing. I had to do that. And then when she said it hurt, so I stopped the conversation.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it no more. So in my opinion, it was up to me to heal the relationship. I can't depend on her. She's not going to do it. She's not going to say, she can't. Because I think my mother loved me, and now that she's out of that situation, she can see that she was an abuser. And I don't even think her brain can handle what she did to her children.
There's shame.
Yeah.
There's shame to it.
And so she tries in her small ways. But one day my daughter, not to belabor my conversation, but one day my daughter was in the room. She said, Mama, when your mother comes over, you jump up. And you get the cleaning, and you get the cooking, and she said, you change it to a whole nother human being. I didn't even realize, because when she comes, I have to be the worker bee. I don't want you to hit me no more. And that's so deep that you don't even realize when you're in that space what you're doing, And so now when she come, I sit down. I do everything in direct opposite of what my body tells me to do. But guess what? That's mental work.
Yes.
I'm constantly thinking. I'm constantly saying, when she says something that irritates me, I have to go in my brain. Don't respond. Da-da-da-da-da. You're supposed to be loving her. Da-da-da. You got to repeat all these mantras in your head. And so while she's there, I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah. I everything you're saying.
I'm uncomfortable.
One of the biggest challenges with my mother is coming home and thinking she was dead. Because she drank so much. She would drink herself and she'd be passed out on the floor. And it was really hard to go through that.
And so it's like, I said I wasn't going to get emotional.
I was just thinking that. We said we weren't doing this.
I was like, I don't have any tears. I'm going to be in work mode. I do. I would be so nervous because I was just a teenager and I couldn't wake her up because she'd be passed out. And I was nervous to call anybody because I thought they would take me to like foster care or something. Or I'd have to go stay with a family member I didn't really know. You know, her family I wasn't that close to them. And so I remember seeing that, and it just hardened my heart in a way that I started trying to teach myself how not to care for her so much.
Yeah.
And it's biologically impossible.
Yeah.
You know, like these women, regardless of how you feel about them biologically, we are wired to be connected to them. And so I have had a hard time forgiving her because she has not asked for that forgiveness. And I know that that's not the way to do it. And I haven't been like you, Carla, in like, well, forget it. I don't even, want it. It's like, no, we have our parents for a finite amount of time. We don't have them forever. And so I try to think every time now when we speak, it's like this, I treat it like it could be our last time speaking. Which is also traumatic, right? Like every time I talk to you, I got to think about you dying for me not to be upset. And I am like nasty to my mother sometimes, like outright for no reason, like she can be being pleasant. One thing she does if I'm traveling, she always wants to know, did you make it? Text me when you land. And I sometimes am intentional about not doing that because I feel like the time where you were supposed to care, you didn't. And it's not that she didn't, she couldn't, but I still hold on to that. It's like, I was 16. You didn't know what I was doing most of the time. You didn't know how I was living. I was fine, thankfully. And life, like I said, it taught me grit and survival. But I do think like you don't get to now at middle-aged, ask me if I made it safely someplace. Like you missed that time. And no matter how mean I am to her or how nasty I am to her, she always comes back the next day like, like that didn't happen. And so it reminds me of like, that's what love should feel like. But it's so much trauma from before.
So you can't receive it.
It's hard to receive it. It's really hard to receive it. And obviously your relationship is yours to manage and own, but I do wonder, it's like, I don't believe necessarily that you're like, I'm just done with you forever.
I'm not.
Yeah.
So I left when I was 17. Well, she kicked me out. It was right after a basketball game. She found out I was pregnant and she was like, well, get out. And to me, that was huge. I was 3 or 4 months pregnant and pack a bag. You got to go. And I left, didn't speak for months. But what I do want to say is that I yearn for my mom on a daily basis. I don't want to do what you're doing. I refuse to be somewhere where I'm uncomfortable because I have the choice to not be uncomfortable. I offered the therapy. I made the appointments. I showed up, but I refuse to continue to do what we always do, is put things under the rug. Just show under the rug and keep it moving. I'm not doing that. I'm not, because you know better. And if it was a socioeconomic thing, which I know that is out there, not everyone can afford therapy.
Yes.
These therapists.
Yeah.
Be a therapist. You can make good money. I have spent so much money in therapy, and with my family, they
on
got
yourself.
it.
On yourself.
I've been doing it on myself, yes, which is where I got here. But I can't say to her, oh, she doesn't have the money. Oh, they got the money. She has the resources. She's choosing not to. It's just come and take me as I am. I didn't do nothing. I love all my kids the same. And not acknowledging what you did. I wrote an open letter years ago on my podcast trying to just get her attention. Just say something to me. Say something. I finished school. I did the good girl thing. I had the marriage. I had the child. I did everything I was supposed to do by the book. And you don't acknowledge anything. Nothing that I do. I quit and I become a successful entrepreneur in a field that is like, I get it. It's different.
Yeah.
Podcasting 7 years ago was like, what are you doing? Are you an escort? And you don't want to tell anybody? Like, are you pretending?
Yeah.
Nothing. Not once has it been acknowledged. I tried again. My last time was 2022. I moved back from a really traumatic relationship with a man that essentially it was her. They were the same person. The same exact person. And then I found like within 2 years that I was asking for that validation from him. And that's all I wanted from her. He filled that void and then did the exact same thing to me. But that's what I knew was home. Chaos feels like home. Being ignored and getting the silent treatment feels like home. Getting something thrown at me or yelled at feels like home. And now I had to go to therapy and spend all this money that I could have spent on clothes and shoes to fix what you did to me. When right now I've asked you, just please acknowledge that I'm hurting.
Yeah.
Acknowledge that I miss you. And as much as I try to replace a mother figure with friends, moms that love me, or my own made family of friends, because we can create our own family, there's not a day that doesn't go by that I have a new baby. I have a teenage daughter that, like you said, I look at and I'm like, shit, am I doing the same thing to her? You know, when she's 17, acting up, you know, stealing my car, sometimes taking my weed. I was like, well, you got to go. Like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, you're doing the same thing to me your mom did to you. And I said, well, wait a minute. Hold on. Because I internalized that. And I'm like, am I doing it? So even now, it's been 8 months. And no matter how nasty she gets to me, I call her and I do what your mom is doing. So I don't know why you can't accept that love, but I hope that I can continue to do what she's doing. And no matter how she is to me at times, hey, baby, how are you? How's your day? And just be soft. When she comes over, I'm like, I know when she comes over, Carla, don't overtalk her. Let her speak. She's only 18. But I tried to be around my mom again. And that feeling that you speak of, I don't want that.
Yeah.
That hinders me in my relationships with my kids and work with my friends. I can't do that.
I promise you, Carla, I know it's scary to face that, but this is the deal. Until you do it for yourself, not for her, not for anybody, you're going to be stuck and your daughter's going to be stuck.
But I feel like I acknowledge she can't do no better. She doesn't want my mom. She doesn't want to do any better. And I know that she has her own trauma. So I've chosen to just accept that and move on.
You felt your mother's heartbeat. You were in her body. You know her. You crave
I don't know
her.
if I know. Am I craving a movie, Mom?
No.
Am I craving what we see?
Are we
sometimes?
craving Claire Huxtable?
Yeah.
You know?
No, we're not craving that. We're craving our spiritual beings. That lady is the closest thing to your body. And when you reject it or you don't have it, you're going to be in pain and it's never going to change.
It just feels foreign and it doesn't feel good.
Okay.
It doesn't feel good because it's just so negative.
It's not, but it's the thing about it is not. It is negative and it is that burden to bear, but your burden is to heal yourself and your child.
I don't think I need her to do that.
No, you don't need her. It's for you. Forget her. I chose to be there for my mom because my other brothers and sisters have abandoned her. My sister's gone. My brother moved to Washington State. My oldest brother died from a heroin addiction. Why? Because he couldn't deal with what was done to him. So I'm left. I'm looking at this lady, and what I do, Carla, I picture her the day my dad left her in the projects. I look at that 21-year-old girl, and that's who I deal with. I don't deal with the lady that's in front of me. I deal with that chick that was a good person, who wanted the best for her life, who had dreams like we had, who wanted what we wanted. And that man left her in total discombobulation where she had to drag these 4 kids out the projects and do it. Did she do it right? But she had to do it. And so now I don't deal with a Claire Huxtable. I deal with that young girl standing by the window wondering where her husband is. Even when my mother hurt me, I don't look at her. I go to that girl and I see her. And that's the story I tell myself to heal myself so I can have a relationship with my children.
Yeah.
Because if I did not, I would be the abuser. I was already turning into her. Perfectionism. I tried to make my children perfect. That came from that abuse. And I'm not saying you have to be, I don't know your mom, but I do see that pain in your face. That
I think no matter what, I've come to my own non-professional conclusion that we're all gonna want our mom in one way or another. You know, we want that. But when it comes at the expense of my mental health, when it comes at the expense of my children, because when I finish being in that space, I am heavy. I'm like, take these clothes off.
Yeah.
Like, Lord, what is on me? What is on me? I can't. And I feel like going through therapy, I've just had to come to accept, like, look, she just didn't know how to love me. I have to forgive for me. So I have forgiven. I know she didn't have it easy, but I'm not going to give you an excuse to not heal. And I feel like everybody as an adult, she not senile. She not in her late 60s. You can go to therapy and you can still do it. Don't come out here. Why is my face still on your Facebook profile? Pretending. Why are you still putting out Bible verses, sister, from church? You know what I mean? Bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, don't. Unless you're going to come to me, and maybe you might not be able to tell me, hey, I abused you in this or I was wrong, but at least now say, where do we go forward? Respect my boundaries. She does not respect my boundaries.
Yeah.
And refuses to respect those. And I feel like I get told off all the time by family. That's your mama though.
Yeah.
And that's something that in our culture we do, where it's like blood is thicker than water. That's your parents. And the Bible says you honor your mom and dad. But can we continue reading on the Bible when it says that they should not do certain things to you?
Yeah.
Because it's not just honor them just because. They can't just treat you any old way.
Yeah.
And you just still honor them and be right there. Yes, mama. No, I'm not doing that.
So you think that dealing with it the way, how's that helping you? Is it helping?
Absolutely.
Okay.
My home is so peaceful.
Okay.
Even my daughter now, like I said, it's only been 8 months since she's been gone. And now recently coming around almost every day. Hey, is there food? Now you know there's food at the house. Can I come and get a plate? Can I come by and just say hi? Hey, can I borrow the flat iron? Yeah,
She just
you
wants
know,
to
so
sleep.
now she's starting to come around more, but it's because I had to give her leeway. Maybe I was too overbearing, making sure she knew I was there. You know, we did the dances and all of that. But for me, I'm at peace finally. I'm not constantly panic attacks. I was waking up years, waking up with panic attacks. I didn't know what it was. It got better for some time when I stopped talking to her after my father passed away. Then I get in this relationship with this man, and I didn't realize I start waking up with panic attacks again before anything went away.
Yeah.
Before any of the abuse started. And I didn't know why. And it's your own body tells you these people are doing something to you. It's your own
The trauma's familiar to you.
Yes. And I don't want to be a part of it. And I don't think we should. And I want to break that cycle where we're telling people just because it's your mom, you have to stick around. You don't.
No, not stick around. But see, you said some things that still affects you, because if we don't really, really go in here and am I healed? No, I'm not, because with y'all, I'm crying and I'm anxious.
Is there ever full healing?
I was going to say,
think
does that
we're
mean
healing.
you're not healed because you cried?
think
I
we're
don't know.
constantly healing.
Yeah, I think it's something that you
Well, I'm
hold on
just
to
saying,
forever.
when y'all talked to me in the green room and we started talking about it, I could feel my blood pressure. I could feel it, like this anxiousness, this tightness. What I'm saying though is, I'm listening to you talk, and it's like, if we don't, I don't know if it's healing. I don't know what it is. I'm saying, but in order to change what we give other people and what people give us back, we have to forgive for ourselves.
But
Because
forgiveness doesn't mean you have to be in the same place with them.
No, not being, no. I'm not saying, that's just what I choose.
That's-
I'm not
that's
saying
your
you
choice,
be
right.
in the same place. But I'm wondering, just like the non-healing for you, the effect it had on your daughter, this dude that came in and brought the same energy, when do we break that? And how do we break that? Because
Right.
what I have discovered is we keep choosing the same things over and over and over until we fix it. You see what I'm saying?
And I
For
chose that now.
ourselves.
The last 2 years, intense therapy. It was my first time being single. At
Okay.
35 years old, I
Yeah.
became single for the first time. And it's been 2 long years of full-blown healing. I was going to therapy
Yeah.
4 times a week, lowered the bill. And it was like, well, what am I supposed to do? I have to heal. And that's when I started placing boundaries with my daughter. And now she's like, well, wait a minute. You used to give me whatever I wanted all these years. And now there's like this, that's where our friction started, because I said, I'm doing the same thing. Like you said, you were trying to be perfect and opposite. I grew up saying, oh, I don't want to be anything like my mom.
Yeah.
And I think because I took these past 2 years to truly heal through therapy, to really sit down and say, God, talk to me. Where do I go? If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here today. My business wouldn't be where it's at. My relationships wouldn't be where they are with my friends, you know, with my youngest son, and even with my daughter.
Right.
But I feel like if I would have stayed there, and if we keep perpetuating to our younger folks or our peers that you got to be there with your mama no matter what.
Yeah.
You know, that's a choice you're making. But for some people, it's really detrimental to them.
I think that what you're saying is so true, because there are so many people out there who watch this and feel exactly how you do. Like, I had to learn to love. But then we have to honor your truth and your experience, and that I cannot invite that back into my life because it disrupts my peace. And I do think that's first and foremost honoring yourself.
Yeah.
And for you, that is healing for you. For me, I'm still figuring it out. I think when you said that you picture that young 21-year-old who was left, I try to do that with my mom as I got to know more about her childhood, not even through her, because she wouldn't talk to me about it, but through family members, especially when she was going through sobriety. I just had such empathy and sympathy for her, because it's like, you didn't have a chance. And really, when I consider your life, you were a fucking amazing mother. You know, like, thank you for everything that you did. It makes me so emotional still. I want to thank her, but I'm so angry about just hurt, just pain that we still carry.
I had to tell my mom, when you went through she said, I did this and I drug y'all out them projects. And when I went, and I said, but you had 4 little soldiers with you, Mom.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't going through it by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We were suffering as well. And you never looked back to see the pain.
Right.
Because it was all about you. And to this day, my mother is almost a narcissist, because she'll say stuff, y'all, like, you know, when the help came on,
Mm-hmm.
she said, I was one of them ladies. I was like, Mom, you want the help? And one day she tells these stories about, I used to dive and I was going to the Olympics. Mama, you didn't.
My mother, I don't know what that is, but I'm like, what? Like, that never happened.
I think that's her coping mechanism.
Yes.
When she started. Who were you at 14?
Yes.
Who were you at 15? She was taking care of 15 kids.
Yeah.
She couldn't be the majorette or the cheerleader. And if she finds a man that she wants to create this wonderful, and what does he do after 4 kids? He leaves her without a goodbye. He told her he was going to get bread. He didn't come back. He got on a bus and went to his mama and never came back.
But does that mean they don't take accountability for it?
That's
We're
the question.
taking
When do you take
accountability. You took it as a mom. I took it as a mom. You're taking it as an adult. Come on. I'm not going to give you an excuse to be a shitty person even today.
No, but what I see is, with a husband, a cute husband with these 3 cute kids living in my house with my Mercedes sitting outside, that shit was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard. And to be able to pass that torch to somebody and say, you take her to children practice, I'm going to work, you do. I looked at it and I was like, she couldn't pass it to nobody. It was constant grind. Constant grind with nobody to help ever.
With
all I
four
see is how much you have this sympathy for your mom and this love. Where are you?
Scrambling.
Right. I don't want that, Miss Crosby. I don't want that. And I don't think that we should. And that is your journey, right? And you're already 60 some odd years old, right? You have what I heard someone said, you have more birthdays behind you than you have ahead of you.
Yeah.
Right? And you're choosing that. And if that's what makes you happy, but I don't want to scramble. I don't want to say, well, my mom had a shitty life. Her mom moved her up to New York. They were walking the streets. She left her dad for a woman. Like, it was a clusterfuck, you know?
Right.
But I can't continue to feel, I see where you're coming from, and I'm going to understand her story, but now what? Today,
you asked an interesting question, I think, because when you said this, I thought about you, because you have so much empathy, and I think it's something to learn from. But when you said, I picture that 21-year-old, I do that, but I also picture that 14-year-old girl coming home, finding her mom passed out on the floor and telling her it's okay.
You have to
I picture
talk to
that
your
5-year-old. Right. I have to talk to her, and I wonder, do you do that for yourself? Do you picture your mom's 21? You were a toddler.
60,
do you talk to her?
At 62, I realized just this year that I'm a people pleaser. Even though I'm very successful, very extremely successful in my life, I'm a people pleaser. I'm the chick always doing it all, right? My in-laws moved in. Everybody kind of decided how they were going to handle it. Everybody moved away. And I was taking care of her full time. And when I became exhausted, I realized, Glennis, something's wrong with you. And that's when I started delving deeper into the abuse of why do I always say yes? Why do I always try hard? Why am I always there? And it has broken me in spaces that I'm just seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to keep crying.
I don't even know what this makeup is looking like right now. Like, we just keep going with it.
I do realize it. But I think for me, it's me spiritually just trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, it's your journey.
It's not even about what she can offer me. And see, now that lady has changed. She's still that person, but she's not that like when I look at her sometimes, I'm like, how did that short lady did you, like when I look at her now, 87, weaker, smaller, shorter, I look at her and I know who she is, and she still does it. I just want to be okay. I just want to be okay. I just want to be happy for these last, I'm going to be 105. So
yes, for these last decades,
right,
these last 4 or 5 decades.
Man, I just want to be happy. And I tell my kids when y'all come, I just want this happiness in this home.
Are you happy?
I'm happy with me. I'm not
That's the most important.
Oh, I am so happy with Glennis Crosby. I love her. She's the bomb. She's faced so many storms, and for what I went through, I mean, the story is long, y'all. We had farms. We had chickens under the house, but we wanted breakfast. We had to go under the porch to get them. It was bad, but she prepared me. That little girl prepared me to be the mother of 6. I am an incredible mother. My kids are incredible. I have some issues in relationships, that's not easy.
And I think that's the part that we don't talk about. And we hear, like you said in the beginning, daddy issues. Where these girls are getting men's validation, and we become people pleasers. Like when we have our moms who are the ones are nurturers, we start nurturing everybody. Because no one did it for us.
We're giving the love we wanted to receive.
I brought homeless people in the house, give them baths.
Big hearted.
Who do you give it to, since you don't, like, we have kids.
Yeah.
You're a woman with mommy issues.
This is true.
Who do you give the love to? Where do you find yourself having those shortcomings?
That's a really good point. You're both mothers and daughters, where I'm just a daughter. I have found it in like a man I'm dating. It's like we find people in our life to affirm what we believe to be true about ourselves. So if I'm questioning, am I lovable? I will find someone who does not make me feel lovable, and I will give that person the amount of affection and love that I wish my mother had given me. That's only really happened once, like in a big major way.
That you have seen it,
but it was something that just shook me to my core. And that the pain of that relationship helped bring me home to myself.
I do have a question for you. Knowing that you don't have children and that's not in your
I will not have
right
kids.
Now,
it won't be in my journey. I had a hysterectomy, so there will be no kids. There will be no kids.
At least biologically, but that you're not going to be raising any children. Do you feel some type of relief that you won't be causing this type of trauma to another person?
You know what I realized? Because in my 20s, I so wanted to be a wife and mother, and I wanted to be like that Jack and Jill mom with a husband and 2.5 kids and the picket fence. And what I realized is I wanted to heal my childhood wounds through a life I was creating with kids and a husband, and that wasn't going to work. And so once I got to my 30s, I changed a little bit, but it was still a possibility. Now I'm 45 and I have such freedom. And I've released so much. I'm not quite where you are. I've been where you are. I'm not there anymore. I'm not where you are yet. So I'm still on a journey of healing and forgiveness. And I'm still taking that journey back home to myself and still comforting that little girl who had so much trauma that went unacknowledged. But I have this love with not a lot of healthy places to park it. So that's the best answer I can give. But my journey continues, as does all of ours.
I feel like there's a lot of women that have the same issue, and it's like, well, we're pouring it into our kids at times, or men, looking for that. And I wanted the white picket fence. That's why I go, any man that was promising me like a family, he's like, yes, let's do it, like take all my daughters. I was married, I wanted all that, and it didn't work. But definitely it affects everyone in a very different way.
And the commonality I think all our mothers have is shame. Like being able to confront what they did is almost impossible for them. And I had to respect that my memories are not my mother's memories. She has a whole wealth, treasure trove of memories. Right.
Perception.
Perspective, perception, everything that she went through, she's also carrying that trauma and now being confronted by me with my own trauma. And I think she looks at me like, you ain't raised child to boot. Like, how dare you even come in here questioning what I had to do when I had 2 kids by myself? So I try to find that balance. But one thing that's interesting to me is this doesn't just play out privately for a lot of people nowadays. Nowadays, it's so public. So the fact that we're talking about this publicly is a huge deal, but it's kind of par for the course for a lot of things that we're seeing across social media now, unfortunately. So now I kind of want to shift us and talk a little bit about reality TV stars, Blac Chyna, and her mother, Tokyo Toni. And I should say she doesn't go by Blac Chyna anymore. Her name is she goes by Angela. Angela White now. She has denounced that life and submitted her life to Christianity. Her mother, Tokyo Toni, had her when she was just 16 years old. And when she got into an argument with her daughter, who you all know as Blac Chyna, in 2018, she called her a mistake and a statutory rape baby, which I can't imagine. And in April of last year, she said that she would Marvin Gaye her daughter. For our younger viewers who may not know, Marvin Gaye was murdered by his father, unfortunately. And so she allegedly the threat came because Blac Chyna did not send her $3,800. So I'm going to play a clip of Tokyo Toni and the way that she is talking to and about her daughter. And I should warn our viewers, this can be triggering and traumatizing. And it certainly is for me just to hear it. So we'll take a listen and talk about it on the other side.
With Angela Renee, the disrespect that you have been giving me for the past quite a few years, I've tolerated it because I'm your mama, you're the only child. But you better keep in mind I'm a bad bitch. You know exactly who you fucking with. See, you wouldn't be where the fuck you are if it wasn't for me. Oh, fuck birthing you, bitch. That was a mistake. Just happened to come into play.
Wow. I can't imagine. My mother and I had issues. I cannot imagine her going on social media doing an entire video about that. She did used to, when she was drinking, leave some crazy comments on Facebook. But in sobriety, she just doesn't do that. I'm going to go to you on this, Carla. What's your take here on Tokyo Toni? And I don't know if I should call her Blac Chyna because she's Angela now, but Blac Chyna, aka Angela.
So we live in a very different society now where everything is magnified through social media and they're a very public relationship. But at the same time, you can speak on this situation like we're speaking about it right now publicly and not have to shame them or speak like that, like just disrespectful, bottom of the barrel. Like, what are we doing? I understand you said she had her at 16. That's fine. But what are you doing, Tokyo? For what? What are you needing? What is going to be the result of this when millions of people are watching you berate your daughter and now your daughter has to do what? Still come back to you. What I usually notice is that Angela at some point reconciles back with her mom and comes back and then they're fine again. And then Tokyo Toni goes back and does another video. And then Angela comes back at some point in time and it's like, it's a cycle that's not being broken. But why are you okay? For me, for her daughter, why are you okay with your mama talking to you like that? And you just are okay with just forgiving it?
Like, she yearns for her mother, like you. And I think, when I see this, we've all talked about the trauma that our mothers carry. This woman is clearly traumatized. Tokyo Toni clearly has some challenges and clearly saw this behavior and is mimicking it now. So it's hard to look at them with judgment, but I do look at them with great sadness. It's just, I'm so sad that this is on public display. And I, to be honest, do not follow these two women, but I think of all the many young girls who do.
That's the problem. We don't have to follow them. This shows up everywhere else.
Yeah.
Someone's resharing, millions of people reshare it. They post, they talk about it. They have think pieces. We have all of the blogs that pick it up because it's entertainment.
There's nothing entertaining about it.
And when you look at it, yes, it's sad because the same way you can Google how to go off on your daughter, you can also figure out how to get some healing. Yes. And there's no one normal or with any emotional intelligence that would do what Tokyo is doing.
I agree with that.
There's zero emotional intelligence there. There's definitely trauma. There are definitely generational curses, but she's choosing, instead of fixing it, to go publicly and speak on it the way she is towards her daughter.
I also think what you hate in others is what you see in yourself. She called her daughter a weirdo, a slut bucket. And
I think that, if I'm not mistaken, they were both strippers. They were both strippers. Like,
Wow.
Tokyo Toni was also out, doing certain things that her daughter also did after. So it's like, maybe you see now your daughter trying to do better and trying to change her life, where some might be like, oh, she's just trying to get attention, or maybe she's healing.
Yeah. And
It's
the mother
like-
could be jealous of that.
Right. It's like, well, I never got to heal. I don't know how to do that, or I can't do it. That could be part
That's
of the
something
jealousy
in mothers and daughters. What do you say, Ms. Glennis? So, I mean, this is a sad thing to see.
I just think
Come closer to them.
they wouldn't be as volatile if the camera wasn't on. See, we didn't have cameras. We don't have cameras. We really have to deal with our real lives.
Right.
And this stuff is clickbait.
Right.
It's clickbait. And so that's another time. You see, back in 80, 70, we couldn't speak to our mom like that.
Right.
Period. I don't care how bad it feels, but the camera is on.
Yeah.
So that gives a whole, it's like, how you want to fight, but as soon as the crowd go away, you don't want to fight no more.
Right.
And I think that this new thing, this new Instagram and platform thing it makes you turn up and so that's work for them. Because the more we curse at each other and fuss, the more we do what we do on TV, the more our ratings go up.
Right.
So that's a piece of it.
Or they just get acknowledgement.
Huh?
Like that acknowledgement, and that like someone
Yeah,
cares.
it's like
even
now-
if it's not bringing any money.
Even if they comment. Nobody was commenting when we was getting our tail beat. So it was nothing to discuss. But now there's comments, whether they're negative or positive, is something. And it brings attention to me. Now I'm a star. So I don't know if that behavior is necessarily our foundation. I just think once the lights come on, because what would we do if the light was on us 24/7 and we getting all this attention from all this talking and negative? Do we go and have a meeting about it? And say, come on, boo, you go ahead on and call me what you will, because now our money is going up.
Right.
So I don't know. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And I feel sorry for them, because the most important relationship that you have in this world, you denigrated
Right.
it, and you just made it nasty, and you let the world see. We are so anxious to let the world see everything. What's private anymore now is sex with your husband, how y'all do that, how we talk about. Nothing is private. Nothing.
Everyone's building like this empire to themselves and fancying themselves in the
Yes.
celebrity world.
Yes.
And I just want to assure our listeners and our viewers that we are certainly not showing this to escalate or add any more value or attention to this kind of toxic exchange. But it's important to show for all the people who do follow and traffic in reality TV, this is not normal. This is not healthy
not
dynamic. And if this is a dynamic that you're experiencing with your parent, please understand, just because you see it played out in reality TV, that it is not a healthy dynamic.
And one thing to point out here, that it's not reality TV. Very common with Monique and
This
her
is true.
son.
Yeah.
That she for her right now, in the era that we're in, she is selling tickets and airing it out. I don't think for Tokyo Toni is doing much, because she's talking about Marvin Gayeing her because she didn't give him money for rent that she didn't have.
Yeah.
So you're behind on rent. Clearly the rents aren't doing much, but it's giving you attention that your daughter is not giving you.
And taking away attention from your daughter, and I'm pulling her back to a space
Yeah.
that she's trying to evolve from. Just so you know, Monique, earlier this year, she was on stage and talked about her son and an older woman. They have a public beef, and an older woman came and said to her, "F that N-word." I mean, for the audience, y'all know what I mean.
Yeah.
Monique said this to an audience on stage, and was like high-fiving, and like it was completely appropriate. And you just imagine, like, what happened to you as a daughter that you would carry this into your experience as a mother. So I try not to judge these women, but I pray for their healing, but as I pray for all of our healing, because we have a long way
These
to go.
relationships are sacred.
Yeah.
And when we even mothers to daughters, daughters to mothers, mothers, whoever they're sacred. And we are dishonoring God when we cross that line, and we don't have principles anymore about anything. It's just so disheartening with, what you see, hearing that. Now I'm sad all over again.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's sad. It's sad to hear.
because a lot of people, y'all, are not experiencing these things, and it's like, I just think it's the time too. It's just the time. I'm over hearing about, let me shut up before somebody come after me, but I'm overhearing about all of these. Go to your person.
Mm-hmm.
Do it. Don't do it in public.
Yeah.
We dealing with our stuff
privately.
You know
There's
what I'm
some
saying?
dignity to
with the
keeping it private.
person.
Yeah.
But I would never forget
Or
it.
if you're coming from a place where you're trying to help others heal.
That's a difference.
It's if you're doing it to help someone or to promote healing, fine.
Right.
But if you're just throwing out there
Throwing
like
it
she
out
did
there.
A, B, C,
Yeah.
and D, and she went shit and da-da-da, and click. Well, what happened? Now what? Okay, so now we're just
Who
telling
did you
everyone
help?
else?
Yeah.
Who did you help?
Right, no one. And not yourself or the relationship that you have yourself.
No.
Yeah. I think this is clearly a woman who has run out of coping skills.
Yeah.
Which, quite honestly, I've been there. I've never been there publicly, but I've been in a space where I've run out of coping skills and had to, your inner self-preservation kicks in.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing about this conversation is the relationships that we have with our mothers is so defining to all other relationships. Even if you have no relationship with your mother, if you never met your mother, still that relationship will determine your relationships going forward. And you can either choose to heal from it, grow into it, confront it. But at some point, that relationship will drive you home to yourself. So I want to thank you ladies for sharing your story. I mean, seriously, it has really helped me heal. I think, Carla, everything you shared is so important for people out there to hear that, because no one deserves access to your mental health. If someone is making you feel uncomfortable, they're not entitled to your space. And I think what you shared, Miss Glennis, is so important, because the journey to forgiveness is also the journey back home to yourself. And I think that part is so important. So I'm taking from what both you ladies said, and my mother will not know about this show until it airs. So I just want to say to my mother, you may not be happy, but I certainly thank you for the sacrifice that you made in raising my brother and me, and to all of you, regardless of how you feel about your mothers. If you have a relationship with them and they're still here, know we only have them for a finite amount of time. So try to make each day count as best you can. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Across Generations, and we will see you next time.